Hey everyone, today we're working on a Subaru Legacy. This is a rare model. It's got a 6-speed manual gearbox fitted with a 2-liter turbo engine. So what we're addressing is we're changing the rear caliper and the brake disc on this side. So it's got new brakes all around. This side the caliper was seized, so we're going to be doing that job now because the parts are coming. So I'll be showing you how to remove your brake disc and change your pads on the rear of one of these Subarus. When you keep your jack stands ready, loosen the wheel bolts while it's jacked up and jack up the vehicle from the rear diff, as seen there. We normally always use a wooden block to prevent any damage or similar. So once you have it up in there, go ahead and put your jack stands in, and then we'll take off that rear wheel. Always make sure to put your jack stands at this notch here. Wherever it's notched, that's a factory line, and that's where the steel reinforcement is, so always make sure you get that right. So these are the tools you require to work on the rear caliper on a Subaru Legacy. It applies for most Subarus as well. This one's got a vented rear disc, so the torque settings are a little bit different between the solid disc and the vented disc for the calipers and the brackets and everything, so we'll cover that later. So what you need is a ratchet, a couple of extensions. You'll need a brake caliper compressor to push the piston back. You'll need a 14mm to take off the bolt at the bottom here for the caliper. Just swing it up and then to change your brake pad. But since we're doing the rotor and disc, you'll also need that 14mm to take off the caliper bracket. And finally, you'll need a 12mm and a standard factory bolt. So it's a 12mm head. So we'll use this to extract the disc. We'll put it in here and we'll just pull it out because normally these are rusted in. So without this, you will struggle to pull it out. And finally, like I mentioned earlier, that 19 to take off your wheel. Since we're doing the caliper on this side and we're replacing it, you'll also need some plastic pliers similar to this, just to clamp off the line to stop brake fluid from coming out. You'll also need a 14mm spanner, just depends on your socket size and your ratchet size, and you'll also need a bungee just to hold the caliper once you take it out. When it comes time to removing the rotor, make sure you release this handbrake. So we'll use a 14mm spanner and we'll open this bottom one. So once you open this one here, this one's up, and then you just pull this out from there. And you can keep it up the top there. Make sure you don't stretch this line over here, the brake line. And you can use a bungee and just tie it down, just so it doesn't roll anywhere or anything. So it doesn't fall anywhere, but we're going to be taking this caliper out and replacing it like I mentioned, so we'll leave that there. So coming to the back here, so there's one bolt there at the bottom, and the other bolt is up here at the top, through there. So the only way you can get access to that is you have to use an extension. Put in there like so. And then using another extension you can get in here from the back. And then you can take it off that way. That's why you need the power bar that I mentioned earlier. So I'll come underneath and just do that. So that's the top one that's loose now. And then you want to come through here at the bottom. So come through here at the bottom. Slide your socket in there like so. Put it in there like so, and that's where your bottom one is. So remember, that's the bottom and that's the top one there. So we'll go ahead and open this up. And when you've removed the bolt, you can see it comes out from here, so you can just get in there with your fingers and just undo it from there. The top one, you'll have to use the socket to take it out from there. So I'll do that. I'll take off the caliper bracket and then I'll... So once you've taken out that last bottom bolt and the top bolt, this just pops out. So what we were removing was the bolts from here that go through the hub assembly over there. So we can keep that aside. Once that's done, you can see that the brake disc is not going to come out. They normally get stuck to the hub over here. And I'll show you what to do for that later on as well to make your life a bit easier. Keep these bolts secure and using that 12mm I showed you earlier. So put a little bit of grease here if your rotor is completely rusted or if you're in a cold country. It'll stop your threads from stripping. So it'll stop these threads from stripping over here and on your rotor. Especially if you're reusing these rotors, that's a good idea. This vehicle is not rusted, so it'll come out fairly easily. If this is your first time doing it, use a ratchet. Don't use power tools. So you want to do it evenly. If you got two bolts, you can put them here and here. I'm just doing it just to show you how it's done with one bolt. You get the idea. So if you got power tools, it makes life a little bit easier. Once that's done, this rotor will be free and it'll just pull out like so. So that's the reason why we had to release the handbrake, is because this is a drum with the caliper setup, so drum and pad setup. So the shoes over here is used for the handbrake. On some other cars, especially sports cars and stuff, they have two calipers. They'll have one caliper here and the other one here for the handbrake. So this is the different caliper I was referring to. It's got a separate handbrake caliper at the top there. This is the other design where you have to wind back the piston in order to fit new brake pads. So using this kind of a tool, you got to actually wind it back. So if you got the drum and shoe system, you don't need to worry about this design on the Subaru, but I just thought I'd include this just in case your Subaru is fitted with design number 2. This goes out. You can either replace it or get a machine, whatever you're doing with it. So we've got all the brake assembly out. We'll move on to the next part, which is putting on the new disc and the new caliper. So as I mentioned earlier, because we're changing this caliper, we want to go ahead and block this line off. Just lock it in. And we want to take this bolt off here. It's a 12mm.
Those are plastic pliers, which are meant for brake lines.
Whenever you open this, you want to make sure you replace both those crush washers and keep something underneath, because you will get fluid coming out. You will get a little bit of fluid seeping out. With your caliper bracket mounted securely, you want to go ahead, if you don't have replacement hardware, give these shims a good clean. Because in most cases, all you have to do is just give them a good clean. And then you want to lightly grease it a bit later on. Looking very clean. This is quite important. A lot of workshops skip this step, but in my opinion it's very important, because you want the calipers should move in and out, because it's a floating type design. So the brake pads should be free and they should not get stuck or bound on these, because then it can cause uneven wear and basically damage your rotor or your pads. As you can see here, the shims are now nice and clean all over here. So what you want to do is add a little bit of grease. I'll put up Subaru's genuine part number. You can add that type of a grease, or you can add any other equivalent type of suitable grease for your conditions. This is especially important if your roads are salted or if you live in a very cold country. You just want to add a little tiny bit to each part. So you can either add it here, like as I'm doing now, or what I prefer doing is getting the brake pad. This is my preferred method with your new brake pads. That's once you got this completely clean though. If you don't get this clean, then you will have to do it. You'll have to grease these shims, but very important that you get it cleaned. Make sure you use clean gloves as well. Don't get any grease on any of the contact surface of the brake pad. So get a little bit of that grease, and you can just dab it all over here. So you want to get it in the edges. All around the edges and everything, and you just want it to be a very thin layer. So that at the moment is a bit too much, so I'll spread it out between this side and this side. It just has to be a little tiny thin layer. This prevents the brake pad from getting seized in the caliper. Just a tiny smidgen. So what we're doing is basically the contact surfaces is what we are greasing at the moment. That stops the squealing as well. So that's another important factor. There, and at the bottom. So you can do it either way. You can either grease that or grease that. And once you have that nicely greased in, then we can go ahead and install the pad into the bracket like so. So that's that side, and then you have this side here. And so using the old brake pad, I've just put it in there like so, the old brake pad, and I've just put my brake pad compressor there. All you do is just literally just tighten it, and you want to make sure that the piston goes in easily and you don't have to add too much force here. If for some reason you have to add too much force, then you definitely want to stop and have a look at the caliper because something is not right. So once you've got that compressed in there, pull that out and pull out your old pad. You won't have to do what I did. So your brake line, you don't have to touch any of this unless you're replacing the caliper. So don't worry about this. So everything will still be connected up in the vehicle. But this is just for demonstration purposes and how to use that tool. When installing your other brake pad, they normally give you one shim per side. So it just goes in here, that slot there, and it just slots in there. Fairly self-explanatory, I don't need to show you that, but that just goes in there and you just push that in there, and that's just your wear indicator when it comes down to the low part. So as mentioned earlier, make sure you take out the old copper washers here and install new fresh copper washers. This is a critical step, especially in your brake system. Don't skip this, it's very important. Always make sure to install new copper washers. With the Y wheel, make sure you clean this surface. So give this all a good clean over here. I've already done it, just remove all the rust over here, and then you want to run another Y brush around all this ring here. And then with a little bit of anti-seize, just apply a little bit here. It'll just make removing the disc easier next time for whoever's doing it. Let's put it all around here. Just a little bit, not too much. Spread all around on the hub. And like I said, especially if you're in a cold country where they salt the roads, this is quite important. Just do that and then you can reinstall the new disc.
But not too much, because you don't want it going near the drum brake.
So this is the minimum thickness if you got a larger rear rotor. That's the slaughter type on the Subaru. So minimum is 16, just in case, out of curiosity. I'll also put that up. If your brake rotor is covered with oil to protect it from rust, you want to spray brake clean and give it a good clean. But if it's got paint like this, you don't need to worry about the surface here. You just want to give it a quick clean. But if you've got a shoe type setup like this vehicle's got, what I like to do is just roughen this surface up a bit. So just basically removing the protection, the paint. Just a light sand, nothing too aggressive. This will just help it bed in a little quicker. So just remember, the handbrake is not usually used unless you're stationary, so this will take some time to come off otherwise. Give that a wipe, or if you have compressed it, just give that a blow and then we'll go ahead and install it on the vehicle. Try and make sure your gloves are clean when doing this. Wipe off any excess grease you might have. That's installed there. Now we'll go ahead and put the caliper on. So we've got the caliper reinstalled. Just got the bolt temporarily tightened down here. What we'll do is take off the plastic pliers, which is crimped to line. We'll be greasing the pads a bit later, so it doesn't cause a squeal between the caliper, but we'll tighten everything up first and then I'll show you that soon enough. Take your other 14 over here for your caliper bolt and slot that in exactly in the same place that I showed you earlier. Use your 14mm deep socket with your extension, and you want to get in there. It's basically reversive removal, fairly straightforward. I'll put up the torque specs soon so you can see what torque to tighten all these up. So the caliper bolts are done up to 66 Newton meters, as you would have seen earlier. So we've got the torque wrench ready, and we'll set the caliper brake line to 18 to crush the crush washers, and that has to be done up to 18 Newton meters. So that's it, 66 Newton meters on there. And on the crush washer now, the 18 Newton meters. And when all of that's done, just with a little bit of brake cleaner. Don't get this on your pads, just at the back. If you change your caliper, give that a good clean and give it a wipe down. And finally, like I said, now we'll grease the pads that we've finished everything else. So you can go ahead and just slot a little bit of grease here. You'll notice that there's no shims on this one. This particular brake pad doesn't require it, but if your one comes with shims, then make sure you use the shims, or if it needs the factory shims, just use that. And just put a little bit of grease in here as well. That just helps it glide a bit easier. When that's done, you just slot it in there. And that final bolt over here, you might, that's torqued to 37 Newton meters. So now we'll go ahead and top off this brake fluid. We're basically going to bleed nearly all of this out to the rear line. Because one of the reasons why that rear caliper might have seized up is because there was water in the line previously, and someone might have changed it and didn't bleed out the system. Get your bleed bottle or whatever you're using ready. And this is an 8mm socket that we need here, or ring spinner, 8mm. Put that in there. The final torque that you're supposed to tighten this up to is 8 Newton meters, just for your reference. So with your helper sitting inside the vehicle, we'll go ahead and tell them to press the brake pedal. And press it gently and slowly. Hold it. There'll be a lot of air, especially if you change your caliper. Okay, go ahead and press again. Notice how it's moving freely. That's what you want to see. Hold. When I tell them to hold, they have to hold the brake pedal and not release it at all. So make sure you're aware of that. Pump. And the reason why this pipe is in the bottle here is just so it doesn't draw air back to the system. Hold. Now notice through this clear tube there's no air coming out anymore. But as I said, we'll bleed this a bit more. Okay, pump. Just to ensure that there's no fluid in the line. Hold. periodically you want to check this as well. Make sure it doesn't drop below minimum. We topped it up before, so it's still fine. When it comes down to minimum, we'll add it up to the top. So we'll be doing this side as well. This was already done a few days ago, but we'll redo it again. It's just good practice to do both sides at once. So with the helper, you can tell them to go ahead and press the pedal. And we want to see the same thing on this side. This clear fluid coming through here. Hold. As you can see, it's clear and no air at all. Now that this is all completed, we'll go ahead and put the wheel back and torque it down to the proper spec. Your torque specs might vary depending on what model Legacy you have. This can range from anywhere between 100 to 120 newtons. But this being the 6-speed manual with the 2-liter turbo engine, we'll torque it down to the WRX spec, which is about 120 newtons. But check with your owner's manual to get the right torque spec. Once you've got all this tightened up, then we want to check the handbrake and adjust anything as required, because you might need to adjust your handbrake as well. So now we'll check the handbrake, pull it up. We'll just go until resistance is felt here, and now we'll go at the back and just move the wheels, ensure it doesn't move by hand. If it does, then you'll definitely need to adjust it, but this feels good to me as it is at the moment. So coming here at the back, yeah, so both sides are fine. So both sides, as you saw, are fine. It's locking, goes a little bit and then locks in place. Release the handbrake. And when you release it, it should be easy to move. Just like that. Another way you can check the handbrake is while turning here. Just get your helper to go up one click. As soon as it goes one click, it just won't move any further. So that's a good indication that the handbrake is very good on this vehicle and adjusted well. Once you've completed the job, you want to take the vehicle for a drive and bed in the brake pads. So what the bedding in process is, you don't want to come to a full stop. You want to slowly and gradually put material into the disc. So you want to press the brake pedal over there, but you don't want to come to a full stop to create hot spots on the disc. So you want to keep the disc moving. And also another thing, you want to take it easy on the car for at least 500 kilometers. Especially when you put new discs all around, you want them to bed in properly before of a spirited drive, so to say. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Just like a clutch, you want to basically bed in the new rotors and pads. When you're at 100 kilometers and cruising on the motorway, slowly and gently press the brake pedal. I'm probably applying about 25 to 30% worth of braking effort just to bed in the new rotor. So now you can see I'm coming up to a stop. So I'm not going to be pressing the brake pedal. I'm not going to be pressing it hard, just very light, maybe 10 to 15%. So that's what you want to keep doing. That's part of the bedding in procedure. If you've got race pads or something similar, then you want to basically come down to a quite aggressive stop and keep going. Otherwise, if it's just a standard car with good quality pads like this car has, then you want to just take it easy and just bed it in slowly. Always stay within your legal speeds wherever you are. whenever you're bedding up your brake pedals, and make sure you do it in a safe environment as well. Now we'll press it gently the pedal and just keep going. So that's all you want to do. You want to press it and then go again. Press it and go again. So then there's no hot spots on the disc and it keeps bedding in nice and smoothly. You just want to do this for maybe the first 3 or 4 kilometers, and then after that just use it as per normal without using it aggressively. So just keep that in mind, and that's basically how you bed in a new set of brake pads. So again, I'm at 100 kilometers. I'll slow down to 80 kilometers, and I'm applying about 35 to about 40% worth of braking effort there. And then when you're done, take it back, check the disc all around. All the black paint, if you got disc with black paint, should have come off by then. And just check for leaks or anything and top up your brake fluid as needed. Thanks everyone, and don't forget to like and subscribe.